Hey brothers, what's going on? JK, your brother in the struggle here. I just got back home from the gym and there was something on my mind that I wanted to share with you guys, and that's the topic of being spiritual as you reboot and as you try to control your compulsive behavior. So, over the years, we're going into our 10th year in Porn Reboots. That's helping men end their out of control behavior. We have helped thousands and thousands of men to control their out of control sexual behavior. And I've noticed a trend over the years. I've noticed a trend towards spirituality, more guys coming in from the conscious community. And I'd like to address some basic beliefs that I've started seeing pop up, particularly in some of our groups, like the implementation program. By the way, if you're under 25 and watching this video, we do have a program for men who are under 25. That's the implementation program. We are at capacity now, so it's been closed for the past 2 months or so. But once in a while, we do have some men who graduate from it. It's a 1-year program, and when they graduate, there are a few spots open. So if you are in our free private Facebook group, I periodically, or my team members periodically, post announcements to let you know when there's some spots there. So great group to join if you're under 25. Anyway, in this group, we've had some brothers bring up the topic of, they're like, I'm spiritual, I've consumed a lot of books on spirituality, I have a meditation practice. I even have men that I've interviewed who have lived in different ashrams all over the world, different temples, studied under different spiritual teachers, tried different spiritual practices. Then we have the crowd that's done plant medicine, ayahuasca, they've done psilocybin, they've had some more synthetic drug experiences or substance experiences, let's call it that. And this has led to some sort of spiritual insight. My point with all of this is many of them are still unable to control their behavior. Like, lots of things change in their life, but they're unable to control their sexual behavior. And they also run into different, I call it existential conflicts. Like, should I keep my job? Should I stay in the rat race? And I see a lot of confusion. And I'm 37 years old, and I'd like to give you guys some, let's just call it some OG perspective, okay? I hate that to use the word OG when I refer to myself, because it reminds me of how old I'm getting, but I am excited to be where I am in life right now at this age. Just weird to say it. My spiritual journey started when I was 17 years old, okay? At that point in time, I was living in Malaysia, which is where my mother's from. And I was going to college in Malaysia at 17, and that was where I began. I'd always had an interest in this growing up, but that was where I began a yoga practice, not the asanas, not the physical aspect, but actually a meditation practice, learning about chakras. Then I read a book about Vipassana. And then the first thing I did was, as soon as I found a Vipassana center here in the US, I joined that center and been on a whole bunch of 10-day meditation retreats. I read a whole bunch of Osho, probably all his collected works and most of his discourses. Consumed a lot of that. And you know what it did to me? My out of control behavior just didn't stop. It really didn't. I read dozens and dozens of spiritual books. I was meditating more than I'm meditating right now. Yet my behavior was rapidly escalating. It wasn't changing. And I was definitely broke. Right, I was broke. Nothing was changing in my financial life. There was a period in time where I was fearless, and that was because I intellectually understood the concept of impermanence, and my meditation also helped with that, to give me a little bit of that experience of impermanence. These brief moments during meditation where I'm not even going to go into the description because I don't want to get woo, but my point is, my life did not change drastically, right? Over the years, over a period of 20 years, there are certain seeds that were planted. There are certain things that slowly shifted, but nothing monumental. And there are a lot of brothers that consider themselves to be spiritual, but they're unhappy. And the reality is that you're just a guy who consumes a lot of spiritual material, and you are expecting something to happen to you. And I think it's my theories that it's worse these days because we now have the conscious hustle community that comes in and talks about abundance and semen retention and all these different things. And they make it seem that if you go down this spiritual path, you're going to somehow, it's going to solve most of your problems, all right? You know it's not going to solve all your problems, but the truth is there's a part of us as human beings, I've said this before, that's always seeking a magic pill. And there's a solace that you find within the spiritual community, right? Like, oh, it's none of this lasts forever. All of this is impermanent. What's the point in chasing all these different things? And so there are two things I want to address specifically, because these are the two things I see brothers struggle with. The first one is that it is more important to actually experience change in your life and on a daily basis have some form of a spiritual practice in your life, whether it is deep prayer, whether it is moments or longer time periods of awareness, things like disconnection. And I'm not talking about reading, I'm not talking about watching videos, I'm not talking about listening to podcasts or discourses, none of that. I'm talking about your actual practice. That's the important thing that's going to enhance your spiritual experience. Also, on that note, I've worked with many individuals who had plant medicine experiences, so many. And here's the crazy thing. When I first heard about things like ayahuasca and psilocybin, I educated myself on it. I'm a professional, and if I hear that there is a plant medicine that has, this was years ago, that helps somebody to rewire their brain and people come out of their addiction, oh, I'm on it. I'm gonna learn what is that about, and I'm ready to have the experience. I'm very thorough when it comes to my research on certain things. And one thing I found was that there's so many people who have had these experiences. Oh, we have been on so many ayahuasca trips, or so many psilocybin trips. They still full of shit, right? Like, they sit in my interviews. My superpower is calling people out on their bullshit. That's one of my things. So if I'm in the zone and I'm helping you while you are in a crisis, right, which is what I do best, I'm very aware of when something seems off. And what I've realized is that a lot of people think that plant medicine and some of these deep spiritual experiences, that they change you. It is my belief, again, I have not tried any of these. I have microdosed psilocybin, but that's about it. But I've never had a big trip. This is just my experience working with hundreds of clients and interviewing people who are interested in becoming a part of our program. My opinion is that it gives you insights into the problems that you have, and it sometimes points you in the direction of, hey, you need to work on this. And that's it. For a period of time, there is a biochemical change, there's a neurological change in many cases, and then your brain just goes back to what it was doing, to the way it was functioning prior to that heavy trip or experience. But that's all it does, right? And you now need to do the work. So it always takes you back to the work. But many men get stuck on the deep insight. Oh my God, the insight was amazing. I had this amazing insight. I saw this, I experienced this. The root cause was revealed and I saw it. And it also confirms another theory that I share over and over again here, which is that finding the root cause does not necessarily solve the problem. People take plant medicine, they're like, oh, it was like years and years of therapy. All right, wonderful. Now you discovered the root cause. Well, what happened? Maybe some people get a little bit of relief, but does your life change? Is your compulsive behavior gone? No. Are your relationships healed? And I used to wonder when I met all these people, I was like, how is it that they've had these experiences yet I don't feel that they act with compassion and kindness, right? That's what I would expect to come naturally out of multiple deep spiritual experiences. Instead, I sense narcissism and self-centeredness in many of them. And for many men, of course, who struggle with sexually compulsive behaviors, especially those who come work with Porn Reboot, narcissism is something that's already there. But it's, still there and very much present even after these experiences. So that's the first thing, okay? So consuming all that material just makes you a person who consumes all of it. Plant medicines, other substances are going to give you insight. And here's the second thing, material things. This is a dangerous one because your physical body exists in the physical world, all right? Your consciousness is something we don't know much about. So you live here. The primary experience is one that is physical. The one that we try to learn about, those of us who are spiritually inclined, is what we cannot see, but we can feel within us. And it takes work to do that. But because you're spending a larger percentage of your time, at least in terms of your perception in this world, brother, you better get your shit together in this world and stop being confused about what you need to do here. You still need a roof over your head. You may still have people you need to take care of. As your parents age, as people who are close to you need help, as a man, you have a responsibility. I mean, you can take your you can drop the responsibility, that's up to you. But if you're living in this world, you have a responsibility to support others, to give back to the world. Like you're not here to just occupy space. You're here for something. And that something is not just spiritual seeking. If you're going to do that, then get off YouTube, get off the podcast, get off social media. I don't want to talk to you on Facebook. And go live in an ashram forever. Like, choose that path if you're going to do that. But some of you are just like, oh, should I give it up? I just want to live a simple life. You're going to be unhappy, especially if you're in your 20s or your early 30s. You're going to get increasingly unhappy. And I've seen it again and again. 10 years in the game, I have seen what happens to individuals who are like, oh, you know what? I'm going to give up material things. Unhappiness is going to come for you, right? Because you can't support yourself. You're always struggling financially. And then you have to deal with all the strong emotions that come up with that. Doesn't it make more sense to, in a material sense, be comfortable? Why? Because when you're comfortable, you now have the ability to focus on the spiritual. You have the time, you have the resources, you have the peace, right? See, the mistake a lot of people make is that, oh, my material things are things we chase and they only give us temporary pleasure. Yes, it's true. You get a little bit of a rush of dopamine. And the thing about dopamine is when you have an experience that is dopamine induced or that induces the release of dopamine, it is something that you're going to eventually want more of, right? So, oh, I bought a nice car. Yeah, dopamine release, maybe some new receptors created. But after a while, it's just a regular car. You see the car everywhere, and you need something else to release more dopamine. Now, we know that, right? So at the very least, you should have learned that from your spiritual practice or all the books that you've read. But on the other hand, we have serotonin. When you have a good laugh with your friends, when you connect with somebody, when you are, I was going to say nostalgic, but nostalgia is more like dopamine. When you see a beautiful sunrise, when you look at a flower and you experience the beauty of that, when you wonder at creation and nature, serotonin is released. The thing with dopamine is we always want more of it. And the thing with serotonin is that the experiences you have are great, but they are enough. You don't want and crave more and more of that. It's just enough for you at that moment. And that's something to be aware of when you think about the material things in your life, right? Here's one thing that I tell my clients, those who are concerned about, oh, I would go for that job, I would put in the hours, I would do all these things, but if I were to drop dead, I would be full of regrets. I was like, then do your work with great awareness. I work long hours, but I do my work with awareness. Like I am fully aware. I am always aware, well, as much as let me not exaggerate. I try my best to be aware. When I work with a client, I drop everything and I am absolutely in the moment. There are no distractions. We are there having a human interaction. I am open. I force myself. I push myself to try to be compassionate. And if the pushing doesn't work, then I release and the compassion arises naturally. So you can do work, hard work, long hours with ambition and still be aware as you go through the process. When it comes to material things, there is nothing wrong with enjoying the comforts of life as long as you do not get attached to them. When it comes to homes, when it comes to, I'm not really a car person. I drive like the same car and I experience different cars once in a while. But when it comes to homes, comforts, whatever, watches, whatever it is you're into, cars, you're not going to be here forever. And you know that. Take care of those things. Consider yourself to be a steward of those beautiful things that bring you comfort. And when you leave this world, somebody else experiences it, but you've taken good care of it. You don't really own any of it, but you can take care of these nice things so somebody else can also enjoy those things and so they can have some comfort in their lives. That's the way I view it. And it's that simple. That's what made me comfortable with acquiring material things. Being aware of my hard work, and even to a certain extent, having my work be a spiritual practice in and of itself. And as a result of that, you get this reward of whatever the finances that come with it. You can use the finances to do whatever you want to do, as long as you're aware of how serotonin and dopamine work. So when it comes to the financial aspect, my recommendation is that you use your finances to buy yourself freedom. First of all, that should be the most important thing, right? The one thing we actually never get back is our time. And working hard or doing whatever you have to do to get to a financial base, at least for me, is really about the freedom to live life on my own terms. I'll give you guys an example. Some of you work and you work very hard, but you absolutely dislike what you do. It doesn't agree with your values, and thus you're not able to do it with awareness. So when you hear me say, hey, have your work be a spiritual practice in and of itself, you're like, well, that's great for you, good for you, sounds like you enjoy what you're doing. Well, get yourself to a point where you can have the choice. You can choose to do work that you actually enjoy and that will be a spiritual practice in and of itself. I don't even know what in and of itself really means. I just like how it sounds, right? I think I'm using it in the right context. That's one example. That buys you freedom to do that. But it also buys you the freedom to live life on your own terms and basically exist in places or live in places where you are treated well. Some of you live in environments where you are not treated well, where it's constantly an uphill battle, but you cannot afford to leave, right? And again, if you are trying to be spiritual while you're in that environment, brother, you're fighting a losing battle, right? You're like, oh, I'm going to give things up, but you're living in this environment, right? The only exception to this rule is somebody who is, let's say, incarcerated or unfortunately disabled or stuck and they're unable to leave. So they have no choice but to, okay, yeah, like I'm going to give up these material things, or the material things have been taken from me. The final thing when it comes to finances, and I got to wrap this up because it's going too long, is that working on that material aspect actually allows you to have an influence in the world, right? So there are certain causes that I'm interested in. I don't depend on somebody else to take care of these causes. Or like, oh, there's somebody who's doing that, like that's nice, I'll let them do that. No, if there's something I care about, if there is a group of people that I want to help, if whatever it is, that's a more personal part of my life, but I have the freedom to go and influence it. I don't have to donate to something because I can go there myself and I can donate directly to the people. I can have an impact, a more direct impact on things. I can help my family members when they're in trouble. I can help friends, people who are close to me, instead of watching them suffer and then feeling bad because I can't do anything and feeling powerless. So those are some of the things that the material part, so to speak, can help you with, right? What does that do? That releases serotonin, right? You don't need more of it. I don't need validation from being charitable. I don't advertise any sort of charitable thing that I'm involved in here on this channel or my podcast or publicly. It's a private thing that I do. When I help friends or family or anything like that, it's just what I do. Sometimes I'll help random strangers who hit me up, and my heart goes out to them. So I'm like, okay, cool. Like, what's the situation? Yeah, let's see how we can help you. Right? And that, you could say, brings joy and happiness to me. I don't dwell on it. It's just there in the moment. That's how I feel from helping. It's not a dopamine release, it's serotonin. And I'm happy to see that person take whatever that they have been given and make something of it, or it makes their life easier, or they're able to come out of their suffering. If I was Mr. Spiritual, I would only have platitudes to give them. I won't give you anything, but I will give you advice. You guys get the point, okay? So I hope this video made sense. My videos have become more and more of rambles, but I think some guys benefit from it, so I'm gonna keep doing them. I appreciate you guys. I'm JK, your brother in this struggle. Listen, if you enjoy these videos, don't forget to subscribe, all right? We don't do any advertising. We are not monetized. We talk about porn addiction and getting over masturbation, so the algorithm doesn't really favor us. So if you feel that there is any sort of quality or benefits to this channel, I would be deeply grateful if you could share it, subscribe, like, and comment. It really helps. It helps many people. Not many people can afford our programs, but like I've said before, the entire system is right here on this YouTube channel. I appreciate you guys, and I'll speak to you later on in the week.